well, thank you for being here. Today was a big day for accountability. I'm very proud of the work the Oversight Committee has done thus far on the Epstein investigation. I'm very happy that we had a bipartisan vote today to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress, and this shows that no one's above the law, and I'm just real proud of the committee and look forward to hopefully getting the Epstein documents in very quickly and trying to get answers for the American people. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, do you think the Attorney General should be held in contempt because the Department of Justice has not produced all of the Epstein files it's supposed to?
It's my understanding the Attorney General is going to turn over all the documents once they're redacted. Now, we have seen the Attorney General comply with our subpoena. They have turned over documents, as I said numerous times today, and I've said numerous times on most of the networks that are here today. We would like for the pace to pick up. We want to get the documents. We're not going to let her off the hook, but from a legal standpoint, she is complying with the law, and we expect to get the documents very soon.
In addition to your subpoena, though, are you concerned that she has not complied with
No,
the law?
with our subpoena, with my subpoena, she's complied. She's turning over documents. Again,
But also the Epstein files.
well, the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a Judiciary Committee thing. They put a date on it. She's going to be in front of the Judiciary Committee in 2 weeks. And I think that's the important thing with what the Democrats were trying to say today about Bondi. And look, no one on our side is defending Bondi. Let me be very clear. No one on our side is defending Bondi. But we have to recognize there are a lot of documents. They produced documents, I think, on 2 different document drops. The first one, the Democrats complained there were not enough redactions. In the second drop, they complained there were too many redactions. So ever how many pages, we've heard numbers range from several 100,000 to several million pages of document. That's a lot of eyes that are going to have to be over it and review it to try to make the redactions, because the victims have made it clear to us that they want anything pertaining to their privacy redacted. And that's the impression I'm under that the Department of Justice is trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, is it important, is there still an opportunity for the Clintons to negotiate some sort of satisfaction of the subpoena, even though you've taken this step with contempt?
There's always an opportunity. It's going to be 2 weeks before this is on the floor. We're going to have to notice this is going to be treated like any other bill. We're making sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed because they have a very expensive legal team. So obviously there are going to be a couple of more days this week, depending on the weather. Then there'll be 3 days notice, and then we can vote on it. I've been assured we're going to vote on it. So that's 2 weeks because we're going to be off a week. They're going to have 2 weeks that they're going to theoretically be able to negotiate. But one thing that I want to make very clear, a lot of what the Democrats were saying today, and I'm not accusing the Democrats on the committee of lying, I'm accusing the lawyers for the Clintons of not being truthful. They were not in good faith negotiating. They never made a proposal where there would be an actual transcript. And I don't think anyone in the media would accept any type of interview without a transcript. Then you're going to have notes, and it's going to be Clinton's word against my word, Garcia's word against my word. That's no good. There should be a recorded, at the very least, transcript, if not audio and video. I would argue all 3 of the deposition. That is the law. That is what is considered legal in court. And I don't think anyone in the media would argue against that. So, yes.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. What specific steps will Oversight Republicans take to ensure that the Clintons are not treated differently than others who have been held in contempt of Congress, like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro?
Well, the process will be once it goes on the full House floor, and I expect a lot of Democrats to vote on this on the floor. And then it'll be delivered to the Department of Justice, and I think that question then can be asked to the Attorney General.
Mr. Chairman, the argument from the Clintons was that they had provided sworn declarations when they received the subpoena and were asked to testify. They argue that other folks who were asked to testify, you accepted the sworn declarations, but you wouldn't accept it as feasible for them. Why weren't the sworn declarations enough for the Clintons?
Because the people that we accepted the sworn depositions from, they replied that they had no relationship and they weren't directly involved in the Epstein investigation. There are no pictures of Merrick Garland or James Comey or Eric Holder who are Democrats, I might add, and Jeff Sessions, who's a Republican. Those were the four that we accepted the declarations from. There's no evidence that anyone's seen, no pictures anyone's seen of them with Epstein or Maxwell, nor is there any evidence that they were directly involved in the investigation. Now, if we find out those declarations are false, then they've committed perjury, and they know that. So they complied with our subpoena. And again, there was no evidence. And remember, let's be very clear here. This all came about from a subcommittee hearing in this room where Democrats made a motion, Summer Lee, to subpoena the Epstein files, and then Scott Perry made an amendment and put all these names on it, and everyone voted for it. That's how the whole Epstein investigation was born in the Oversight Committee, and that's where the names came from, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Everyone besides the Clintons have complied, and 2 Republicans actually sat down for hard-hitting depositions. You can look at the transcripts with Barr and Acosta, and the Republicans weren't any less confrontational with their questioning than the Democrats. We are sincere. We want to know the answers. We want to get the truth to the American people. We expect Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice to deliver the documents, and we hope that people are finally held accountable for crimes. And we want to know why did the government drop the ball for the victims, and how can this be prevented in the future?
When do you expect Pam Bondi to release those documents? It's been more than a month since the statutory deadline, and there have only been 2 drops of documents. You say you're confident the Attorney General will comply. When do you expect the full documents to be out, and is there a deadline by which you expect her to produce the documents, or else you would pursue something like contempt?
I was hoping the documents would be dropped today, or whatever they've redacted thus far. I would be shocked if some of the documents aren't dropped before her testimony for the Judiciary Committee. You're all going to be there, and that was another argument when the Democrats were coming back with Bondi. She's coming in front of Congress. Now, she's coming from the Judiciary Committee because, among other things, the discharge petition is a judiciary jurisdiction. So if we're not satisfied with testimony from judiciary, I could see a scenario where we ask her to come in front of the Oversight. We're serious about getting the documents. This isn't political. Remember, one of the things that I said in this hearing today, one of the first demands from I shouldn't say demands, one of the first requests from the victims when we met privately, Republicans and Democrats, for 2 hours, is subpoena the estate. I did that. I had no idea what was going to be in those documents. It could have been very damaging to Republicans. It could have been very damaging to very important people. I had no idea. We want the truth. No one on my committee said, don't subpoena the estate. We want it. Everyone voted for the discharge petition except one. We want the documents. We want to get answers. We want to hold people accountable, and we're not protecting anyone who committed any crimes.
Given the point you made about the photos and the personal relationship that former President Clinton had with Jeffrey Epstein, should President Trump also be subpoenaed because he had a personal relationship with Epstein?
Well, obviously, President Trump's answered a lot of questions, and I'm looking around the room, and many of you have asked President Trump questions about Epstein, and I'm confident President Trump's going to have to answer more questions from you all. You're very curious.
Under oath by your committee.
Well, there's never been a sitting president come under oath in an oversight committee hearing, but we'll see what how this plays out. We want to get the truth, and look, I'll go back to what Bill Barr said, who I don't think anyone would argue is a big fan of President Trump. He said under oath in the deposition that he believed that if there had been anything damaging about Donald Trump in the Epstein files, that it would have been released before the election.
Were you
So you're
surprised
clear
by
you're
some of
not-
the Democrats who voted for this?
I was not. I've always hopeful that some Democrats would vote for it. Look, when we were in that meeting with the victims, there were some Democrats, and they were the ones that voted in favor of holding the Clintons in contempt. They were sincere about wanting to get the truth, and they were sincere that they didn't care if the victimizers were Democrats. They didn't care who they were. They wanted to provide accountability and get some justice for the victims. So I felt like in my heart there would be Democrats vote for it, and I'm very, very proud of the ones who did. And I might add, more Democrats voted for this than against it.
And what about the concern about setting a bad precedent here of having a former president come in, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what you think that you need him for, but the idea that that goes down a very slippery slope. When we've had the Supreme Court rule that the current president is immune from any type of prosecution, and you're gonna drag a former president in here conceivably.
Well, look, this was voted on by the Democrats as well in the committee.
But the concern about the precedent.
Well, look, I mean, no one's above the law, Chad, and there are a lot of questions about the numerous visits that Epstein had to the White House when Clinton was president. There are numerous questions about the number of times that President Clinton flew the post-presidency on Epstein's plane. Again, no one's accused Bill Clinton of any wrongdoing, but we have a lot of questions. And to my knowledge, he's never sat down with any of you and answered any questions. So hopefully someday we'll know the truth.
To be clear, you
Yeah,
just said, but I'll
go ahead. Go ahead. I've answered a bunch. Go ahead.
What do you think about Congressman Min voting president?
Yeah, some people vote president on things. I don't know. I don't even know why that's a thing. I don't think I've ever voted president other than when we do the roll call vote. But, I guess president's better than voting no. I don't. Well, Annie.
Two things. When we were talking about President Trump, you said, we'll see how this plays out in terms of whether he would be involved in this investigation. So are you not ruling out that you might need to talk to President Trump?
We're going to
either
talk to,
voluntarily
we're
or
going to
via
talk,
subpoena?
look, everything, I've said this publicly many times, there's nothing that I've seen that implicates President Trump. When we met with those victims, I think this is very public, there were several Democrats that made very clear to ask the victims if they ever saw President Trump do anything wrong, and every one of them said no, they never saw. The only thing they said was they knew, one said that they heard Jeffrey Epstein say he was friends with President Trump, which, that isn't a lot of evidence of any wrongdoing. So again, I go back to what Bill Barr said, if there had been any evidence of wrongdoing by President Trump, that it would come out. But look, as the documents come in and more evidence is revealed, then we'll go from there. No one's above the law, and we're not gonna leave any box unchecked. I'll answer one more question.
Do you think that Bill Clinton's history and Monica Lewinsky, that contributed to this vote and why?
I don't know.
But that is well known about him.
Yeah, I don't know. Trying to stay. Look, one of the things that I think it wasn't men. I can't remember. One of the Democrat members said, "Well, the lawyer said you wouldn't agree to have the scope just about the Epstein." That's not true. We've always just cared about the Epstein stuff, and that's what we did in the Biden investigation. We didn't bring Hunter Biden in and ask about the stuff on the laptop other than the money. That's what our investigation was about, influence peddling. We never veered into the salacious stuff on the laptop, and that's the same with this. We're not going to go back in history on any sins or wrongdoing that Clinton may have committed in the past. It's all Epstein related. We want to know what anyone that spent a lot of time with Epstein, what they knew, if they saw anything, if they can help us, point us in a direction. We have no idea how Epstein made his money. We have no idea how he accumulated so much wealth. Remember, his estate's worth $750 million. So there's just so many questions that we have. That's what our question of Bill Clinton would have been about had he complied with the subpoena. I'll answer your question, I'll leave.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. I wanted to ask about the Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon situation, because there have been some conservatives saying they think it's a double standard. I've heard other legal arguments that the circumstances of those cases is different than the one for the Clintons.
Yeah. Well, look, I guess it goes to whether you believe the January 6th committee was a legitimate committee or not. Some people believe it was a legitimate committee, some people don't. The reason some don't, and I fall in the category that I don't, is this committee, statutory committee, the Democrats appoint who they want on the committee. I don't say, no, I don't like Jared Moskowitz, he can't be on the committee. If Hakeem Jeffries or whoever's in charge of the Democrat Party, if they want Democrats I don't like on the committee, that's tough. I gotta take what they send. So the January 6th committee, when Kevin McCarthy appointed members of the committee, Nancy Pelosi said, no, I don't like Jim Banks, I don't like Jim Jordan, we're not gonna have them on the committee, and that tainted it from the start. But regardless, if you are in the school of thought that it's a legitimate committee, they were issued a subpoena and they didn't comply with the subpoena. So look, I think the law is very clear. When you're issued a congressional subpoena, you need to comply with that subpoena. And the last thing I'll say before I leave, there was a point in debate back and forth with Mr. Garcia and I. If you look at the letter that Bill and Hillary Clinton sent me, one of the things they said when they were attacking me was, this is an unlawful subpoena. I asked Mr. Garcia, do you agree with the Clintons that this is an unlawful subpoena? And he said, no, sir, that's a lawful subpoena. So that right there, I think, hurt the entire argument that the Clintons had. And I think the Clintons have probably are thinking more about how they can get out of this today than they were for the last 5 months, because the court of public opinion is not on the Clinton side. And I think that's one reason some of the Democrats, not all, some of the Democrats crossed over. The American people want to hear from anyone and everyone who has any knowledge about Epstein and Maxwell and any potential wrongdoing. And remember, there's also a legislative purpose in this. We want to see if there's anything we can do to pass any type of legislation to further prevent sex trafficking or identify sex traffickers or be able to apprehend sex traffickers any sooner. So we've got a lot going on here, a congressional investigation to try to answer questions for the American people, as well as legislative intent to try to hopefully prevent terrible things like this from happening in the future. Thank you all for keeping up with this, and we'll keep you posted on any further communication or correspondence. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, that couldn't have gone